Hi guys, my name's Claire. I first wanted to start off really quickly with just a little check-in. I know it's a little bit after 5 p.m., it's getting close to dinner time, and some of us might be getting a little bit hungry. I was just thinking about how amazing it would be if you could make food appear out of thin air. Now, some of you guys might not believe me, but our speaker today did just that. So my name is Claire Antoneau. I'm a sophomore studying cognitive science, and I'm so honored to introduce the founder and CEO of Air Protein, Dr. Lisa Dyson. By harnessing technology first developed by NASA during the space race, Air Protein is literally using carbon dioxide to create food through a closed-loop carbon cycle. Their mission is to sustainably feed 10 billion people by 2050. Lisa gave a TED Talk on this concept, which has gained over 1.5 million views. VCs have invested over $107 million in Air Protein, and the company won the 2020 World Economic Forum Technology Pioneer. Beyond Air Protein, Dr. Dyson has earned her undergraduate degrees in math and physics from Brandeis University, a master's in physics as a Fulbright scholar at the University of London, and a PhD in theoretical physics from MIT, as well as her studying string theory. She's combined this deep scientific expertise with her business side as she worked as a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group. She has been a part of research in many fields, including bioengineering, physics, energy, at Stanford, Princeton, UCSF, MIT, and up on the hill here at Berkeley Lawrence Labs. Dyson is also the co-founder and CEO of Coverity, a biotechnology company working with the supply chain to change production of everyday products like plastic to instead products created using carbon dioxide. She's been recognized as one of the 100 most creative people from Fast Company in 2017, one of the top 100 female founders by Inc. magazine in 2019, and as a 2024 Bloomberg New Economy Catalyst. I am so honored to be able to introduce someone who has deeply impacted the fields of science, food, business, and the future of our planet. She is someone who is and will continue to be integral in how we think about food. Please join me in warmly welcoming Lisa Dyson.
Good to be here. It's my favorite thing to be able to refer to someone as doctor when they are doctor. It is so nice to be sitting on the stage here in front of everybody. I don't know if you can, well now it's not as Berkeley-esque as it was a little while ago. Let's see. I wanted to share something. Hopefully I can do this. There we go. We'll go back to this in just a second, but I wanted to give you all a visual of what Claire started to describe. Lisa is by far the most learned academically of any speaker that we've had all semester. And in fact, she is so focused on changing the world and disrupting that I am looking forward to having our conversation and looking forward to also your questions. But before we go into those questions, you, as the Mars Unreasonable Food Fellow, had asked two questions of our class. If you were on a spaceship to Mars, how would you eat? And I invite you all in the audience, I have some of your questions, but I'm wondering if you've had some time to think about it, if anybody has any brainstorms. How would you eat? Yeah?
Astronaut ice cream.
Astronaut ice cream, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah?
Using some type of hydroponic technology.
Hydroponic.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what else? Yeah. Ooh, say it again. Rock?
A straw.
A straw. Interesting. No, there's no idea that's a bad idea. Anything else? I like how we're all in the middle here.
The movie The Martian.
So you would eat the Martian, or you would do it? You're on the rocket ship. Remember, on the rocket ship going to Mars. Well, let me show you all some of the things that you said. And then before we do that, though, I do have a question for you. You told me that you're a Mars Unreasonable Food Fellow.
That's right, yes.
What the heck is that?
Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay. Well, Mars is the company that makes M&Ms and Mars bars and all those different things, lots of snacks and treats, one of the largest food companies in the world. And they partnered with the Unreasonable Group to really find companies that are working on unreasonable solutions to many of the problems that we have. How do we grow food that's more regenerative? How do we grow food to feed, the nations as we get more and more people on this planet? How do we focus on health and wellness? How do we focus on sustainability? So they selected, a handful. There's probably about 30 or so companies now that are part of the cohort, and so that's we're focused on scaling new innovations for the food of the future.
So I like that. It's very clever, Mars. Now, I didn't quite get that. Here are some of the answers. There it is, freeze-dried food, in drink capsules, cubes of food that might taste like nothing but are edible or have a crunch. I thought that was kind of interesting. Carry soil with seeds to plant in case I ran out of food. Sounds like Mars. Sounds like, oh my gosh, I totally have forgotten who the actor is. Who was the? Matt Damon, thank you very much. I know this was a long one, but I thought it was interesting. Make sushi rolls wrapped in edible magnetic seaweed that sticks to a magnetic plate. Whoever had this, they put a lot of thought into it. Snap your sushi roll to the plate, then eat with magnetic chopsticks, or do the same with tacos. Push a button, and the taco assembles itself midair using tiny robot arms. You just have to catch it before it floats away. Or quinoa, a superfood. Or the meat, the high protein diet. What do you think of these?
Yeah, well, if you're going to travel for them, keep kicking these. Let's move those out of the way. Yeah. If you're going to travel to Mars or distant planet, if you're going to be on a spaceship for like a year, there's no grocery store to go pick up your meat. So all these things, everything would have to grow. You'd have to, for the sushi, you'd have to figure out how to grow the rice, the seaweed. For the meat, you'd grow the feed first, and then you'd grow the animal. Right now, it may take a year to grow a cow. I mean, you can grow it, obviously, not to its full extent, or what have you, quinoa. All these things take time and months to years in terms of how we make them today. And so you have to figure out how to make food faster than that. And using minimal space, less space than it takes right now to grow pretty much everything that's up here. It takes...
There we are. On the
that's
rocket
right.
ship.
That's right. And if you're going to figure out how to grow food, it's the same thing as having to figure out how to recycle carbon, because we're all a carbon-based life form, and we get our carbon through our food, and we need that in order to survive. And so, essentially, what the scientists at NASA thought about during the Apollo space program in the 1960s and 70s was, how do you take the CO2 that the astronauts would breathe out? All of us are breathing out CO2 now, capture that, and then use that as an input to grow something and grow it very quickly. And of course, plants use CO2, so you can grow plants. Still would take, in many cases, lots of weeks or months to grow those plants. And you'd have to figure out a lot of other things. But one of the ideas they came up with was to use cultures, like a yogurt culture, that can grow in a matter of hours. And so you can essentially grow nutrients very quickly, very rapidly, using minimal space. You don't need to it doesn't require photosynthesis, so you can, use energy. I can get to the details around that, but not photosynthesis. And so you can have like a fermenter, essentially. So you can scale vertically, minimal space, and grow food very quickly. And then the astronauts would consume the nutrients and then breathe out the carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. And so you create this closed-loop carbon cycle. So that's essentially what the astronauts at NASA, or the scientists, were thinking about in the 1960s and 70s as a way to grow food very fast using minimal space, minimal resources. And we just pretty much picked up where they left off.
I am curious how you even decided, how you landed on that. Maybe that has to do with, maybe we should go to the second question, I don't know. But I mean, we are talking about disruption this semester. And going to Mars, which I think is maybe 8 years away. Do you know how long it takes?
Oh, how long does it take? A year or two? Depends on lots of details, but
a
couple
or two?
years. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was 8 years. Well, there you go. Just
Depends on how fast you're going, obviously.
Fast, relatively speaking. But how did you why was this an issue?
For Mars,
Yeah.
if you're going to. So, I mean, during the Apollo space program, the mission was to get to the moon before, anyone else. And the scientists were asking, if we go beyond the moon to a distant planet, then how do we sustain life? How do we make sure that we do that effectively? So it was just a part of that whole Apollo space program, that mission to the moon and beyond. So that was the original impetus. Of course, that is now a focus. Many people are focused on that today, so it has been rejuvenated, that effort of trying to go beyond our planet to other planets. So it's alive and well and active again.
The second question that we'd ask the group here is, how would you find out how far your food has to travel to get to the store, and why is that important? And I thought, I'll open it up to you all. Anybody want to take a stab at that if your answer isn't up here already, or even if it is? I thought some of these answers were kind of interesting. I don't know. What did you think? Did you get a chance? I'm not sure if you got a chance to look at it. I thought this was interesting. And the label as a dotted journey timeline, it might be important if it's sustainable. I would scan a QR code to see an interactive value chain. It's important to know the origin of the products. I have to say, I wasn't sure if some of these things exist right now.
Yeah, this is very interesting, and lots of ideas here. But I think on the how far your food travels point, a few years ago there was a study that said about several thousand miles, like 1,000 to 2,000 miles, is how far your food may travel on average. Of course, it can be even further than that. If you think of Chilean salmon, or from Norway, or if you think of bananas from Central America or what have you, or many different places. So food travels quite a distance to get to us, to get to our plate, to get to the grocery stores. And so that's an interesting thing that many of you will see. Sometimes when you go into the grocery store, it'll let you know where your food is from, and other times it won't. But
are there countries around the world or societies that are better than we are about how far food travels?
I'm sure there are. I don't know which ones are, but I grew up on a farm. I mean, that's actually a very interesting sentence that my brain just created. My mother grew up on a farm, not me, but I grew up in a family.
Hallucinating just a little bit.
Exactly. I grew up with a family that they were all farmers, and they knew where their food came from. They would, wake up in the morning and work the farm, and then walk 1 hour to go to school, walk 1 hour back, and then work the farm. They knew where all their food came from, and that's just different today. The question is, how many people in this room know where some of your food came, like 10% of your food came from this week that you ate? Yeah, most of us don't. It's just very different now than before. And the relevance to what I focus my life on, is relevant for many people, for many things, is that what we're working on is a way to make food that anywhere on the planet, anytime, not tied to seasons, not tied to geography. You can grow food where it's cold, in a desert, and beyond. You just need elements of the air, water, and energy. So it's essentially a new way to make food. It's new, but it's the way nature does it too. In nature, the types of cultures that we use, like yogurt cultures, they are the local nutrient sources of the ecosystems where you might find them. And you might find them in the soil or hydrothermal vents, places that are kind of at the surface of the earth or beneath the surface of the earth. But they are nutrients for those local ecosystems. And so it's almost as if you're out foraging and you found some new seeds, and just how do you plant those seeds? How do you grow those seeds? And so that's really what we've been working on.
And that's like Air Protein. It's kind of like, I like that name because it's like what you're doing. And I'm just wondering how Air Protein and Caverity, how you collaborate, because you're doing both. And Caverity seems like it's more overarching, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, we started Curiousity first, and it turned into really a technology platform, kind of the engine behind many potential solutions to transform how things are made in the world. And then we scaled up the first solution from that technical platform. Curiousity has about 30 patent families across many different inventions, and has worked with a lot of different companies on solutions. And then as a company, commercializing that first solution of protein from air is really where Air Protein came from.
How many people are behind the companies? How many people are working on things?
Well, we've had a lot of people over the years, and we have a lot of investors. There's about just under 20 between both companies today, and probably more than that investors, probably 30 or 40 investors we've had over the years or what have you. And then if you go beyond that, you think of the companies that we work with that are, contract manufacturing. As we scale, that is our focus now. Our focus is scaling. We're leveraging contract manufacturers for that scale up initially, and then we'll build our own production facilities in the future. So a lot of people with a lot of different skill sets.
Where do you get your funding? How does it break out? It's just such an interesting, different area, and I don't think you're focused totally on VCs.
Yeah, between both of those companies, there's been a lot of investors, from angels to venture capitalists and beyond. There's government funding. Curiousity received funding from the Department of Energy, several different programs the Department of Energy had, including and also State of California, the California Energy Commission, and Air Protein and Curiousity both have received funding from the Department, from DARPA specifically.
Yeah.
DARPA.
I mean, I think a lot of people here would like to be entrepreneurs, and you're familiar with the pitch and how you pitch to a VC. I'm just curious, how do you pitch to DARPA? Or Department of Defense.
Yeah, I think in the case definitely of public funding, it's a pain point that they're trying to solve for, and so that's a case of how do you get nourishment to if there's a disaster and you need to have disaster relief, humanitarian aid crisis, or contested logistics. To get food to some people in the world is planes, trains, and automobiles. It's very expensive, very costly from a perspective of actual cash and equipment and lives, can be very costly. So if you can actually put a unit in a place and make food in 24 hours from air, water, and energy, this can be transformative. So that's essentially the DARPA project that we're working on.
It's interesting. We've had a lot of people who've made a lot of money, who've been very financially successful, but most of the Berkeley students I talk to are looking to do something that they care about and something that will have an impact on the world. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you could just take us back to the early days. You told us that your mother grew up on a farm, but I'm wondering what your parents did to and how they instilled stuff in you. And my gosh, how you got through all that schooling.
It's so interesting that I did get through all that schooling. I actually went to 14 schools growing up. My parents were divorced. I went back and forth between mom and dad moved a lot. And by the time I was 14 years old, I'd entered my 14th school. And I told myself when that happened that I was going to figure out how to stay at this school. I was not going to move. I was not going to transfer schools if I could. I was going to do my best. And during the years from that point until I graduated, I did move several times between mom and dad, to the point where I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get from my dad's house that I just moved to, his new house, to the school that my mom enrolled me in that I vowed I wouldn't leave. And so it took me. It took a lot of sacrifice, but I was able to ultimately graduate with the same kids that I'd entered that school with when I was 14. And so maybe I'm just used to going to a lot of schools. Getting education, that was really important.
It's interesting. I don't know if we've talked about this, but I'm an Army brat, and so I too went to like 12 schools by the time I was 12. And you get itchy after a few years. But my itchiness did not lead to all these different schools like yours did. How did you decide what you wanted to do? You started at Brandeis, and like most of the people in the room here, you were undergrad, and it seems like you always knew what you wanted to do.
Oh, not at all. Yes. So, at Brandeis, I was a math major, and then I added physics, and then I went to, when I added physics, which I saw basically math come alive in looking at the electromagnetic fields, and fusion is what I was studying at the time, fusion energy and magnetic fields and tokamaks and all these things. And so that caused me to add physics. And then because I was so math oriented, I ended up focusing on string theory, more theoretical physics, as I moved through grad school. And after grad school, I went to the Boston Consulting Group. I actually went to BCG right after graduating. I went there partially because my dad passed away my last year, and he was an entrepreneur, and I had a lot of business ideas. That was like, let me just get this degree out of the way first, and then when he passed away, I was like, let me tip my my toe in business. And Boston Consulting Group was a great way to do that because you're thrown into many projects. When I first got there, they gave me a project, and I was working with some VPs of marketing and some other roles. And I'm like, don't you want to give me a spreadsheet? I mean, but what they hire for is just the ability to solve problems. And then what you realize is that is very translatable to business problems. And you can just gather the data and help these executives solve their problems that, all the data's there, but just figure out a way to analyze it, crunch it, and give it back to them. So I did that after graduating, but I was doing physics on the weekends. And so I really was still interested in physics. And then...
when you say that, I'm just curious. Are there any math or physics majors in the room? Just curious. Are you doing physics on the weekend? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
But what do you do when you do physics on? I don't even know what that means.
Well, for me, it was continuing the research that I did for my thesis. My thesis was on rotating black holes, cosmology, and time travel, and I had some more ideas on that. And so it was more continuing that work. And then ultimately, I ended up doing a postdoc after BCG, where I wrote the paper that I'd been working on while I was at BCG, and then published that, and then decided that while I did love physics in many ways, when I was at BCG, I saw my ideas come to fruition faster. I saw them test them, or reject them, or implement them, or save money, whatever it was. But it just happened so much faster than working on theoretical physics, where my ideas may never be tested, or it'll be 50 years before they're tested, or something. So that caused me to see that I needed something that was just, science was definitely a part of my future, but I needed something that was, I could see the fruits of my labor faster.
So what I don't understand is how you did BCG and you did all your fellowship work. Fellowship.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it? Fellowship.
Yeah,
Fellows.
I left BCG to go back to come here and do a postdoc here.
How did that work? Because you're on the East Coast. Had you lived in California before?
Well, I'm from LA.
Oh, so yes, you have.
So I definitely lived in California before. I think the important thing there is that my brother was like, these numbers are not adding up. You're leaving a BCG salary to come do a postdoc. But it was all about what I loved. And at that time, I was like I said, I was doing physics on the weekend. So it was all about following my passion, following the thing that was interesting to me. And that led me in many different directions, but ultimately led me here to what I'm doing now.
And I think that's maybe when we met, but I think that was like 2015 it was a while ago. 2014? Could have been, it was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So that's so fascinating. I want you all to start to think about questions of your own, but I am then curious, after you had been working, how did you switch then? How did you know you could go to industry? This whole setting up a business in what you'd been studying is fascinating, at least to me. How does that work?
Setting up a business?
When you have been studying things, yes.
I think growing up, my dad was, he was in cosmetology. In particular, he did hair. But what he...
Something I can relate to. Yeah.
Awesome. And what he saw was an opportunity to train people on how to do hair like mine. Yeah. It's a little bit different. And so he ended up getting a company really interested in the idea. And so he was the president of a chain of 55 hair salons called Soul Scissors. And so it was all about not just training, but there was a lot of different components to it. There were hair products and other things. And he ended up starting his own hair salons, having his own hair products. So I saw him as an entrepreneur, have ideas, gather people around him, and then see those ideas come to fruition. Or not. I saw the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, but I saw just him chasing his passions. And so for me, growing up in that kind of environment, I knew that if I just set my mind to it, then, I could do things. And that's probably what led me to set my mind to graduating from the same school that I entered in when I was 14. So it's his example of do what you want to do, go after it, and try to enjoy yourself.
Then how did you leverage all the contacts at all the different schools where you were as you started your companies?
How did I leverage the contacts? Well, nicely, companies do, these schools do have alumni databases, so I definitely tapped into them. But what I would say is, when we first started working on this, we got some friends that we knew from grad school. They came over to a lab that we rented in San Francisco after their day jobs to help us figure out if this idea we had was worth anything or we could actually do it. And happily, eventually, we figured out that we could.
And what was that idea at that time?
We first started working on CO2 to fuels. That was what we first started working on. And that was, we were able to successfully do that, but the market changed. The price of fuel was high, and then it dropped.
Yeah.
And then, investors were investing, and then they all left. So a lot of market dynamics essentially kind of changed that focus. Ultimately, with Coverti, when Coverti got investment, we asked the question, not just if we build it, will they come, but if they want it, they'll, will they pay for it? And so we started going to companies and saying, hey, we have this technology. Is there a problem that you need a solution for that this technology can solve? And then so companies started paying us to do research, essentially outsource research to help them solve their problems.
I think that is something that has to be almost learned, knowing that to pivot that way, and that's super smart. How did you think about doing that, going to companies? I mean, people talk about that, but I mean, you were at a point where things weren't scaling and things weren't working the way you wanted. You had to pivot and do something differently, and then going first to the client instead of we have something really cool. Do you want it? It seems, I mean, when you look back, it seems like a no-brainer, but I don't think it is at the time.
Yeah, I'd just say that I probably was groomed for that, just being someone, you as well, jumping around in schools, but just jumping to different schools, jumping between mom and dad, seeing my dad have different ideas and, start different efforts in his entrepreneurial journey. So I was probably just groomed for, if this isn't working, try to figure something else out.
So now when you look at both Coverti and when you look at Air Protein, what are the mission statements now at the moment for both of those? The whole word mission statement feels so different when you're like Mars. I'm thinking of Mission Mars. But what is it that you're focused on now? And I'm wondering if it seems like it changed a little bit for Coverti, but I'm wondering what you're focused on.
Yeah, I would say that, so definitely Air Protein is focused on the future of food and how do you make food in a way that's decoupled from supply chains. I mean, has anyone in here bought eggs in the last year? So there was a point when you went to the grocery store and there were no eggs. Yeah. There was a signs, out of stock, or if there were eggs, only 1 carton or 2 cartons per customer. So that's just an example of a broken supply chain. But that happens all the time for food manufacturers. And how can we make food in a way that's, with a supply chain, is more robust, that is robust against disruptions as the weather keeps, these record-breaking weather events happening continuously, droughts and floods and storms and everything that are affecting crops. There's so many reasons why we need supply chains that are much more stable. Yeah. And that's really one of the things that Air Protein is leaning into: resilient, sustainable, robust supply chains. And then for Coverti, it is, how do you make molecules that are used in the world in a way that you can make in a robust way as well. So they both have that kind of resilient supply chain focus, yeah. But one is for kind of industrial purposes, and one is for food.
When you have such an audacious, it is kind of an audacious goal, but so incredibly important, and it feels like it's a no-brainer. Of course, we should be focused on this, but how do you measure? How do you measure success? How do you, what are your metrics that you use to, am I making progress against these goals?
Ultimately, success will mean there's solutions scaled in the market, and you go into a store and you buy products that are made with these raw materials. So that's the ultimate success. But in advance of that, initially there was lots of technical milestones that needed to be hit. I mean, the NASA scientists had this idea of making edible nutrients from air, water, and energy in a matter of hours, but they didn't finish. They didn't succeed. They succeeded in hitting a lot of metrics, but they didn't make edible food in hours. And so it's there's a lot of scientific things that have to be done, a lot of technology, scale-up things that have to be done. So it's just a matter of just setting out the plan and knowing that you're on the right path, going up into the right direction.
Do you have a 2-year plan, or is it a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan?
We have all, 30 days, 60 day, 90 day, 10 year, like there's all kind of plans, right? So you start out with a vision. So what are we trying to change in the world? What's the big vision? What does that mean in 5 years? What does that mean in 2 years? What does that mean in 1 year? You just keep going back. Absolutely.
Now, I am curious how you manage to do everything in your day, and then you were also talking about doing physics on the weekends. I'm wondering what does a typical day look like for you?
Let's see, what did I do today? Today, we talked about a bank loan. That was one call. There was a call with our business development team talking about the companies that we're negotiating contracts with them and the status of those contracts, kind of the next steps for those contracts. Let's see, what are some of the other key things? We talked about our product, kind of what is our product strategy. There's been some innovations on the product that the team is putting together an outline of how that affects the performance and how we can offer new performance features to companies, things like that.
How would I see your product at a company?
It would be inside. So we're like the Intel inside of food products.
Yeah.
So it's what we essentially make is like a flour. The flour is rich in nutrients, has all the essential amino acids, rich in vitamins and minerals that are both bioavailable. And it would be an ingredient on a pasta or in cereal or in a bar or any of those other things. So you'd read it on the label.
Can we see it yet?
Not yet. You'd have to come to San Leandro, which is where we have what we call our air farm.
Yeah.
And that's where we do have tastings there. We do have chefs that come.
Do you have tours that go through?
We do. Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. I don't know. I think that would be pretty cool to look at. I invite the coordinators, if you all have questions, I invite you all to start getting your hands up for questions. And then while people are thinking, you seem to be so adept at addressing problems, and you have this, this kind of uber competence, more than even confidence. But I'm just wondering, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like it was just something was beyond you? Like, what's the hardest problem that you feel like you've tried to solve? Sorry, I know I didn't ask you that question beforehand, but
What's the hardest problem that I tried to solve? I think that what I wasn't taught in my home or in school or in my science class, my math and science classes was just the people part of running a business. And how complex. The math is easy, but the people can be hard.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that I've learned. I'm learning more every day, but learning over the years, it's all about motivating people, getting them excited, tapping into what brings them to work every day, what is motivating to them, getting people to get along, all kinds of things. And so there's a few things that we implement at our company, at Air Protein, and it's been implemented at Converti as well, is things like having an I wish moment. Every week we have that where you give shout outs to people, but you also identify things that are going wrong or things that need to be changed, giving people opportunities to give gratitude. How do you create culture? I think that was a main question for me for many, much of my entrepreneurial journey. And I can't say that I've succeeded and solved all parts of it, but that's a part that's so critical for building a company, is building that culture.
Did you, other than BCG, have you gone to work at any company that you haven't created?
I have not.
Interesting. I open it up to questions from you all.
Oh, sorry. No, I definitely have. Oh, I'm sorry. I was at Sizzler when I was in. I don't even know if people know Sizzler, but it's a restaurant. My first job was at Jack in the Box.
Yes.
And Sizzler, and I did coding.
Yeah.
I was a software developer, a database developer. So yes, but this was many years ago, so I've forgotten about those.
I will say that I always think that working in service, which Sizzler is, and certainly Jack in the Box
Yes.
is something that will serve you for the rest of your life. You may not love it, but you'll learn a lot from it.
I loved being a waitress. I loved serving. When people came and requested my table, that just gave me so much gratitude.
Oh, I love that. Questions? Yeah. Do you mind, Haley? Do you have right there? Right there, I had the hand. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, that would be really nice.
Yes, my name is Isabela Baos. I study computer science, and my question is, how do you approach challenges when you don't know, like, what is the actual way to start? Because you've seen like very complex topics around your career, and most of the times I feel like in entrepreneurship, there's like no rules of what is the next step. So what is your usual like way to tackle these challenges?
Find an advisor and say, I don't know what to do next. So I think for me, that was one of the most amazing thing I learned about when I became an entrepreneur, was just how willing people were to share their advice and their time. And there's so many experts out there in everything. Everybody knows more about something than I do. Every person on this planet. And luckily, many of those people were available to me. And so I asked advice of so many people, like until I get closer to understanding the problem, the opportunities, or what have you. And it's important. The other part of that, though, is to not take people's advice, listen to them, and get a diversity of advice, of viewpoints, and then decide what you want to do and what's best for you. Because they don't know your situation. You're an expert in your situation. They don't know your situation fully. So trust your gut. That's very important. Your gut is telling you something for a reason, and go with that.
Do you have any tips for listening?
Tips for listening. A lot of people listen to speak, including myself. So listening, just being very, just curiosity. Every time there's something like, what is the thing that you just said that I know the least about, and then go deeper in that. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I've said this before, like, tell me more. That's my trick for myself, and also
nice
to hopefully get people
And
to
also
tell
I'd
more.
say, ask, how did you do that? What questions, I say specifically versus,
Yes, no?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get some more questions? Yeah. We'll do that.
Someone
and then
has a
okay.
microphone there, right?
How can you even see? Who's next?
Okay. Hi. I'm Hannah, and I'm a freshman studying.
Hannah, I'm sorry to do this to you. Can you raise your hand?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Hi. Hi. I'm Hannah. I'm a freshman studying cognitive science and data science, and it was really inspiring to hear you talk about how you've really managed to stick to what you've wanted to do and your passions, even from moving through like 14 different schools and then in the end getting so many degrees. So I was wondering, throughout this process, like all of the degrees that you studied are very hard, like heavy STEM topics, and these concepts are pretty challenging, but you still managed to like juggle a lot of different things at once. What is something that has helped you really delve deep into the very technical side of like physics and math, and how have you applied that to creating a business that people can understand in layman's terms, and like creating a model that can help everyone without like making it sound super complicated?
Yeah, well, I think what I'd say, thank you for the comment, and what I realized after I got my PhD was that anybody could do this. Not everybody wants to. That's the difference. Not everybody wants to go get a PhD in string theory, but anyone could do it who wanted to. So I just want to state it loud and clear, that the complexity is, so in each field that you go into, there's jargon. And if you walk into the door and everybody's speaking the jargon, then sure, it sounds like, oh, I can't understand this. But you just need to learn the shortcuts. This jargon is just shortcuts for like, there's this paragraph you need to read to understand what I'm saying, so let me just use this one word. And then you walk in, everybody's saying those those single words, so you don't understand. So that's just what I've learned as I go into any space. It's just, everyone's got their shortcuts, and so it sounds complicated for someone from the outside looking in, but it's available to anyone. And the making things sound simple, also took a lot of work because I would definitely say that my early days of pitching, probably people didn't understand me. I had to learn how to not use the jargon so that, because people can understand the concepts, you just need to, talk about the concepts. And so that's what I had to learn over time.
Did you, were you always such an eloquent speaker?
Thank you. I would say, I think the double clicking on what I said just now, it takes time and practice to speak to different audiences. So I definitely spoke to string theorists when I was doing string theory. And,
What's that like?
again, anyone can do it. You just need to learn the shortcuts. And it's fine. So I think it was just the time to take all these concepts that I had learned and it's a nice process too, because you understand things even more when you have to make it, speak about it in a simpler way, as it were. So I think that's what it boils down to. How can you just make things relatable?
I've heard you use metaphors, and I think metaphors are also a kind of an interesting way to make things simpler. Yeah, who's next?
Hello. Hi, my name is Raveen, and I'm a fourth-year chemical engineering student. Your vision on how to produce food independently of supply chain restrictions and how to recycle carbon is really groundbreaking and really inspiring and motivating. I've done some work here at Berkeley with the Altmeat Lab on how to figure out how to extract things from plants to help food taste fattier, because food is very some people are very picky. There's a lot of cultural things about it, and it's very, very near and dear to some people's hearts. I know that you mentioned that air protein is currently aiming to be used in protein pastas and bars and stuff like that. Do you think at any point it'll become a fully fledged meat replica? Is this the goal? And what would be the biggest barrier for that to happen?
Yeah, so I say that a lot of people started working, and glad that you're working on this, on ways to make things that taste similar to meat. I actually am a Boca burger person. So as someone who was a vegetarian for many years, I liked my soybean Boca burger, but with Beyond Meat and Impossible and the wave of let's try to make it taste like meat, a lot of people worked on that. But we can go back to the first wave of AI, the first wave of electric vehicles. We just went through one of those waves. And now a lot more people are interested. There's a lot more research that'll happen at universities like this. And then eventually, don't know how long it'll be. It might be 10 years, it might be 20. It'll probably come back and it'll be solved. I fully expect that. In the interim, if you go to the supermarket, there's protein in everything. I was just in Chile, and there was protein in my yogurt, in the beverages at the gym, at the coffee shops, on the counter. So it's a global thing where protein is in everything, and we make an ingredient that can go into any of those many different things. So that's really where the market pull is right now. And in the future, there will be more of a market pull towards alternative meat, as you mentioned.
I think it's interesting because the lab is, I think, changing its name. Do you know that? Yeah. I can't remember the new name, though.
I don't know what it is either, to be honest.
It's not all meat. It has no meat in the word.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Yeah. Or, yeah.
Hi, my name is Farid. I'm a chemical engineering master's student at Berkeley. I actually wonder about a few things that you mentioned. It's quite interesting that you're mentioning that you're an ambassador for the unreasonable or
Mars.
Food ambassador. So it's quite interesting that you went to the world of physics. You took a PhD in physics, and now you're pursuing a journey to challenge the laws of thermodynamics and trying to reverse basically whatever the natural processes that are happening. But I wonder how, at what stage do you consider yourself at your company in terms of reaching or creating food from thin air? Other than when we talk about plants or anything like that, in terms of technology, did you reach to something that you think, in your opinion, is promising and could be happening in the near future, or we could hear about in the near future?
Yeah, so NASA did start. We stand on the shoulders of giants. They started this research. They started with these ideas back in the 60s and 70s, and they didn't finish the challenge. They did make a lot of progress. We picked up where they left off, and happily, we've succeeded in making food from air. And we've succeeded in getting independent GRAS conclusion, so regulatory, for 2 of those ingredients. We've scaled it from not just a lab scale demonstration, but to a demonstration pilot facility, which is our San Leandro facility. Yeah. So we're checking those boxes that you mentioned early. Can you do it? And then can you do it fast? And then can you do it in a bigger setting? And can you do it in a way that's edible? And then can you do it in a way that has nutrients? And can regulatory check the box? So we've checked those boxes. The next thing that's left for us is to scale, is to build commercial manufacturing facilities. So that's really where we are. And this is natural. These are nature's microseeds, is what I like to call them. So they're seeds in nature, microorganisms, that in these local ecosystems, they take dissolved gases in these local ecosystems and they recycle them as to make nutrients for other biology in those ecosystems. So it's as if we were in the forest walking and we found a legume and we picked it up, like, oh, okay, let me figure out how to cultivate this. I'm going to cultivate it by putting it in some soil or whatever I'm going to do. But this one, no, we put it in water. We don't put it in soil, we put it in water. We feed it elements of the air. What are the elements? Nitrogen, oxygen, carbon. These are all elements of the air, carbon dioxide. And then we need energy. We take electricity, power, and we take water. We split the water, and that gives us hydrogen, and we feed that into the process as well. So there's a lot of scientific details on how it works, but it's we've proven that we can do it. It can happen.
So when Mark and Martin came out with Tesla, it took 20 years before anybody else was competing with them. They were stunned that it took that long. Do you have competitors now? Do you have any thought on how long it's going to take to have more competitors?
Yeah, I might say I'm stunned that it's taken this long also. But yeah, there are companies that have emerged and researchers that are working on this. Not many, because essentially what is different that we're doing is we're taking fermentation and we're adding hydrogen, essentially. So it's a hydrogen fermentation or oxyhydrogen fermentation process, whatever that means. But that's the difference between what we're doing and, say, a traditional fermentation, which will give you your yogurt or your cheese or your beer or your wine. So the traditional fermentation is over there. This one involves oxygen and hydrogen or oxyhydrogen. So that's what's different. So that means the equipment, there's some equipment differences that are important. The cultures are different that you use, or that's important.
So that'll be a barrier to entry also.
It is a barrier. It is a different way of doing fermentation, as it were. But there are companies that are now starting in this, and DARPA's bought in on making this something that's available to the world.
Wow. All right.
Hi, my name is Guadalupe. I'm also a chemical engineering major. And my question is, how do you see your company in the future contributing to the global food crisis that we are going to face due to climate change and other factors?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the good thing about this is it's a way of making food that doesn't need a certain climate, doesn't need certain weather, doesn't need a certain season. So you can make food anywhere, anytime, and you can make it as long as you have the air elements, as I mentioned before, and water and energy. So you can make it anywhere. You can pull water out of the air too. There's technology that does that. So this is a way of just having a robust, resilient supply of food. So I would say that it will probably always augment. I love what do I love? I love grapes. I love, blueberries. There's so many foods that I love that we're going to always grow. But if you go into a grocery store, the edges of the grocery store are going to be your fruits and your vegetables, and the back might be your meat and your seafood, and everything else in the between is products with ingredients. So that's really where we play, products with ingredients. Again, your pastas, your soups, your many different things. And so I think that it will be a way to have more available anywhere on the planet. Places where the old way of farming is no longer available because of weather changes. A unit could be deployed there, or 5 units or 10 or whatever, that can give nutrients to supplement any other things that they might be growing or importing or what have you.
Okay.
What,
Hi.
behind you, actually.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, my name is Essie Nam. I'm a business administration major, and I'm taking an exchange semester here at UC Berkeley. So I think I kind of like, I'm a bit concerned about what the average or the final consumer would be thinking about such an innovation or a product, because I mean, even going through your Instagram page, I've seen people ask, is this like healthy to eat? And so for the final consumer who might probably end up eating this kind of food, meat or whatsoever, how are you thinking about getting them to understand what the component of this, what they're eating is, and because I think there's a cultural thing of like, we know eating meat is maybe coming from a cow or fish or whatever, but then if I'm getting to know that this is something, let's say, artificially generated in quotes, then I think I might be skeptical about trying it. So how do you get people to understand what you are manufacturing, and how do you change the cultural perspective that people may have about it?
Good question. And first of all, I guess I should look at the Instagram page. I think 2 things. One is we have those conversations with food manufacturers. So we have like all the data sheets on all the nutritional value, all the different studies that we've done and tests and confirmations and, the regulatory piece of it. So we do that from a business B2B perspective. And once we're actually out in the world, so this is not something you can buy today, then a lot of that information will be available to consumers. So consumers will see that this is as healthy as, again, this is fermentation like making yogurt, like the prebiotics that we have, like making cheese. So it's as healthy as making cheese, for instance, or it's actually healthier in many ways. It's higher protein content. It's got rich in vitamins and minerals that are bioavailable. So there's a number of reasons why this may be healthier than many of the things that we're already eating. So I think at that point, that's when all that will become more available to the public. So it's a good question, and it's an important question that when consumers, when we're in market and people are actually buying this, how are we going to educate them? And that's when we'll focus on that. Going back to the plans and going back to how do you know you're making progress and what are you doing, that's just something that's a little bit further away because we're still scaling up. So we're still focused on other problems we have to solve, challenges that we're facing, and that'll be an important challenge. And but separate from that, we've done many studies. Or not just studies, but people are eating this. They're coming to our facilities. We're shipping it to different places. So we're having those direct interaction with people and getting that feedback directly, which has been, positive, et cetera, et cetera. And that will just be scaled in the future when we're ready.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Pia. I'm also a chemical engineer major. And I worked in the wine industry. So for me, like the fact that this is through fermentation is so crazy, and that this is like a new fermentation process. So like, when you were starting this type of approach, like how do you deal with this uncertainty that maybe this would work, or how could you scale it up like to food or make it like marketable, profitable?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty stubborn. We went to contract manufacturers when we first started this, and we were like, this is what we want to do. Can you do it? And many of them said yes, but then they saw that it had to do with, it was fermentation, which they knew how to do, but it had oxygen and hydrogen involved, and they're like, sorry, we can't. So that happened over and over and over again. So then we just had to go hire the right skill sets, bring this really diverse group of people together and find like different labs that are doing things similar and, kind of create this cohort of different groups to develop the technology essentially. And it required a lot of innovation. So we just kept pushing, we kept pushing. I think that's part of the answer. Was there another part of that question?
How do you keep yourself motivated to keep pushing? I mean, I think there's something in you that just does that, but is there anything else that helps?
So I think for me, I definitely thought when I first read the NASA papers, I was like, this is actually kind of crazy. But then I was like, if we could actually scale this, then it could be transformative. And I think I've just been, I've been sort of, what's the word I want to use? Hypnotized by what's possible. Like I just see it, I have the vision, and step by step, we keep proving that it's possible. Yeah. We keep, we've made the food, we made it highly nutritious, we got the regulatory, we scaled it to, so it's like all these things, we made the, we're in, other companies are using this, they're trying it, and it's just.
And it hasn't been like 2 years, it's been like
It's
10
been
years.
It's a journey, it's a journey. To your point about Tesla, I mean, these things, when you look, it takes a lot to get to the overnight success, like in most cases, not so much in tech, as tech is, you can have an overnight success faster, but for the hard, the kind of things that you got to build equipment and hardware, it does take a long time.
Yeah. There's a question over here, I thought.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for the nice talk. I'm also a PhD student right now in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, graduating next year, and thinking of maybe doing my own business. And you've had a really diverse journey leading up to this point. So I was wondering if there was a moment that you knew this is the path, like entrepreneurship is the path you were meant to take. Was it in your personality, or was it more like, I don't know, something building up, or circumstances? What is, I guess, some people call it your mission statement, or the North Star in your life that keeps you motivated to take sometimes leaps of faith in bold ideas that are transformative, but also comes with a lot of uncertainty?
Yeah, I would say that every time we face a challenge, I don't want to say every time, but in the early days when we were facing challenges, that's when I kind of knew this was my thing, is like, I thrive off of figuring out the creative solution. When we ran out of money, many times, like it's was hard, but also invigorating to find a solution. And that's something you face as in the entrepreneur journey a lot. You just, like, you're the one who has to solve it. Of course, and happily, I'm surrounded by such brilliant people that are experts in their domain, that have so much to offer, and that want to solve it. In the early days, maybe there wasn't a lot of people, but now I have such wonderful people by me, around me, and I'm going to also add the other side, which is it can be very stressful and very isolating as the entrepreneur, and it was actually at an Unreasonable Group had an event, and there was an advisor there who told me, he's like, Lisa, I see that you're carrying the burden of your team on your shoulders. Look at how they inspire you. And it was such a great sort of shifting in my thinking and my perspective, and seeing and being inspired by these wonderful, brilliant people that I have the privilege of being around and working with. There's so many people who've been on this journey. There's so many people that have gotten us to where we are here. I would say that I am different in that the hard moments are almost the moments where I thrive a little bit. And I'd say that's the difference, whereas that they might get others down in a different way.
Yeah, I guess to me, I feel like as a leader, a part of the responsibility is also to provide security, a sense of security to your team, and also be inspired at the same time. Do you feel that there's a balance, like when things aren't not going so well? How do you balance finding solution and inspiration from the people you work with while making them feel, secure in some way?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, this one has changed a lot over the years. I would not say that I offer anybody security. It's just not something I'm offering in the world. I don't know if there's security in the world, but I offer a ride on a journey, and we don't know where it's going to take us. We don't know if we're going to be successful. Like many look at what you guys don't even know what MySpace is probably. Before Facebook,
I would say no.
you know, like there's so many companies that come around and innovations, whatever, that come and then they go, and then someone else picks up and finds all the gold and the good stuff and builds on that. We don't know if we'll be successful. Not everything is successful, but yeah, I think I try to be as clear as possible that I make no guarantees. Like, this is the journey we're on, and here's why I believe, and here's what I'm going to do. And if you want to be on this journey as well, then we'd love to have you. So security, I know that sometimes people are looking for that, and it's a startup still. Like even big companies. I mean, there's a lot of layoffs out there, so there is no security in general, but there is definitely more security at a big company. There's a less chance that you'll be laid off, but yeah.
I have a question for you, unless there's somebody out there with a question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Max, and I'm a fourth year studying computer science and cognitive science. So I consider myself more of a research scientist than an entrepreneur right now, and I can see from your past that so you've like mastered all these like difficult subjects, and I'm sure that during your process of like finishing up the degree, there are opportunities that industries or like and other fields or trying to recruit you to join their team. What would you choose at that when that happens, when that opportunity is given to you? Like, yeah.
In the future, or are you saying if for a student?
Yeah, for a student, and when you were a student, what would you choose based on in that scenario?
And can you give me the scenario once again? So you're researcher. There's these different opportunities. How do you define the opportunities?
I would say like a really good like position in the industry, and but it may not be the thing you wanted to research on at the moment.
Yeah.
Then yeah. How do you balance that?
So if I understand correctly, you're saying if there's a great position, but it's not necessarily your passion. It's not what you're interested in at the moment. Totally.
Yes. Could you be in that position? Yeah.
There's a few different ways to look at it. One is, can I leverage this position to get what I want? Is this going to be the door that opens? Because the other door just may not open at all if I just pursue it directly. I may be able to get to that door indirectly. So that's one way to look at it. Another way is if you want to just try harder to find the thing that you're looking for. I think both are legitimate approaches. Some of it has to do with your risk appetite. Some of it has to do with your ability or desire or willingness to navigate from a path that seems set in one way to the path that you want to get to. So if there's an opportunity, the first question is, how can that opportunity get me to what I want? That's the first question I'd ask. And if there's a route, then maybe that route becomes interesting.
Okay, so another follow-up question would be that, so you seem like a person who really knows what you want in terms of research and doing the business. So how do somebody like find out what they want? How do they find the North Star that guides them?
I might seem like I know what I want, but I started in math, and then I went to fusion research, and then I went to string theory, and then I went to Boston Consulting Group, and then I went back to research, and I researched in brain-computer interface. I did a bunch of things. I can go on about all the different things I've done. So I built a network for a volunteer campaign before Facebook was popular. Facebook was out, but it wasn't popular yet. You know, I've done independent consulting. So I've done a lot of different things. And I think for me, I've just followed what was the next thing that I was interested in. And
Follow your like intellectual pursuit or something you like.
Yeah, something I liked or just whatever I was trying to accomplish next. When I went to Boston Consulting Group, I wanted to learn about the business world, and that was the route to do it. So I just follow, and then when I came back into the postdoc, I wanted to finish this paper I was working on. I wanted to do more physics research at the time, but then when I finished that, I wanted to research other things, and so I, did that and started looking at neuroscience and things. So for me personally, I just follow, and I'm gonna. It's actually kind of funny because at some point my brother was just like wondering how am I doing this and why am I doing it? And he said, I figured you out, Lisa. You act like you have a rich parents. And I don't know, like for me personally, I just follow whatever is the next thing that I want to do without inhibition.
Gotcha, thank you.
If you talked about a little bit earlier how if you were stuck, how you'd kind of get advice from somebody, just kind of ask your mentor. But I'm wondering for students here who are focused on research or working on string theory or nuclear fusion, how would they how would they approach you? How would they get your time? What would be interesting for you to hear from them to give you some time graciously, like you've given us time tonight?
Yeah, I would say. So, and it applies to when I first started this journey, because I went on to the MIT alumni database and just started Googling or searching for people that had certain backgrounds and then sending them emails.
What'd you say?
Yeah, and so I would tell them, however it comes together, is however it comes together, but something about like whatever they're interested in, how that's related to what I'm interested in, how I'd love to learn more about it or what have you, and can we just have a quick call? Quick is sometimes the important word. People will give you your time, but they may not, if they don't know you, they may not want to block off too much time. But if you get on a call and you start talking, then they may make a lot of time for you. And I was really surprised pleasantly by how open and supportive people were, and how they would, help me and sometimes become an official advisor of the company and do other things, introduce me to others. When you're talking to someone, always ask for who else can I talk to? That's something you always want to ask for as well. And if you're interested in business specifically, we entered several business plan competitions, and there's just a lot of advisors that are part of those business plan competitions that are sometimes assigned to you. So it's like their job to advise you. So that was probably how I first learned about this whole group of people out there that are open to give you their wisdom with asking for nothing in return. And that was amazing. So that was how I first found out about it.
It has been so fascinating to hear what you all are trying to do and how you're translating that into biteable chunks, no pun intended, but really biteable chunks, which is exactly what I think you've left this impression of. You can do what you want, whatever you put your mind to, as long as it's one foot in front of the other. So thank you for putting your feet in front of the other and coming over here to talk to us at Cal. A huge thank you. And if you all have questions, Lisa will be here for a few minutes afterwards, but let's give her a huge round of applause.
Thank you.